Oh, what a wonderful week it was for HBCU athletics. We had the HBCU Legacy Bowl and also the HBCU Classic between Howard and Morgan State. And trust, none of it was disappointing. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. With more odds, props, and lines than ever before, BetOnline, where the game starts. And coming into the HBCU Legacy Bowl, there was a question. What quarterback would separate or stand out in this game? And the question was answered with a resounding answer of Geremy Hickbottom, quarterback out of Tennessee State. Funny enough, he's actually been on both sides of this. If he would have stayed with Grambling for another year, because this was his first and only year in Tennessee State, he would have been on Team Robinson, but instead he was on Team Gaither, and he completely stole the show. Now, listen, leading up into this, I was looking Aqeel Glass. Everybody else, let's see. That's where I was at. If you remember last week, when I was telling you, Aqeel Glass, I expected to show out, but I wanted to know which one of the second guys, who was going to get the 2 or the 3 and the 4, who was going to be that guy. But the truth of the matter is, in this specific game, not talking about the draft process, not talking about the HBCU Combine, the multitude of pre-draft bowl games that have happened. In this game, the HBCU Legacy Bowl, Geremy Hickbottom was not the 2. He wasn't the 3. He wasn't fighting for runner-up. He was at the top of the podium. He got the gold medal when it comes to this. He was the offensive player of the game, and he was the best quarterback. I don't mean he was the most unexpected. He was the best quarterback to step on that field on Saturday. That's in my opinion. And I think it was also kind of justified and validated by the fact that he won offensive player of the game. I didn't need to see that for me to say that. That was my personal opinion walking off from the game. Had nothing to do with any awards that he won. But I look at it and he passed the eye test. I'll give you his stats because we didn't have stats in front of us, so I had to collect after, right? And because unfortunately I wasn't able to get media credentials for this. So next year, I do believe is going to continue going on. So next year, I fully believe that I will have media credentials. I'll be up in the media booth, so to speak, the media press box. There we go. Been a while, right? But I believe that we will be able to get more hands-on coverage for you next year in HBCU Legacy Bowl. Next year's HBCU Legacy Bowl, and I was in the stand, so I didn't really get any stats. I was just watching strictly eye test, and to me, he passed that. I will give you the stats though. On Saturday, Geremy Hickbottom was 9 of 15 for 72 yards. He also had 25 yards on the ground and scored a touchdown on the ground as well. Like I said, I didn't need those stats, but I will give you those stats. Those stats are yours, right? I'm going to strictly speak off of the eye test. And I felt like he was the most efficient quarterback as far as just how his passes were coming out, how they were landing at the receiver. And he had 2 drop passes that would have made his day look so much better. There was one that was a definite touchdown. It was I think it was either a wheel route. I didn't see the route develop, but it was streaking down the sidelines and just dropped at the 1-yard line. In other words, he was scoring. It was nobody in front of him. He was scoring. That was a touchdown. It wasn't caught in the end zone, but that was a touchdown. And then he had another one that he threw down the seam route. Down the seams, and it was right on him. He had to extend a little bit, and when he did, he came down, and the receiver just didn't catch it. But his day looks good. Like I said, 9 of 15, 72 yards. Those are decent stats in an all-star game. It's basically what this is, an all-star game, right? And you put that aside, he had 2 drop passes that would have added. Probably he would have definitely took him over the 100-yard mark, and I think it would have got him close to 150. with those two passes, his day looks so much better. But I thought he did have a really good control. And this is a guy that when he came to Tennessee State, both Eddie George and Hugh Jackson called him a culture changer. That just speaks to who he is. And I think this is great because last time we saw Hickbottom, some might have thought, and I wouldn't even blame him, some might have thought that was the last time that we would see Hickbottom because he was carted off the field. He was put on one of those back braces that you get carted off on when you have like an upper shoulder up injury. He was carted on one of those. I think it's called a backboard, something like that. When he's carted off on one of those type of things, you think people you're not coming back from that. But it ended up being just a spinal contusion, and it's crazy for me to say just a spinal contusion. But when you think about how far that could have went, completely different, right? And when I think about it, for him to come back and play the way that he did in this game, it showed people like, don't count me out. I'm still able to play because some might have questioned the health and like how it was going to bother him, but it didn't really seem to bother him in this game. And then that mental processing that he showed on the field, executing those passes, executing the runs, it wasn't done off the field. So when you go off the field, he had this quote. I've seen it in the paper. I actually read newspaper because I was in Louisiana. It's the only time I ever read newspapers. But I read the newspaper, and it was a quote where he said basically, football doesn't last forever. So he took advantage of the career fair. I don't know how many athletes at the Legacy Bowl took advantage of the career fair, but he did, and he made those connections. And I thought it was smart because, I personally, I kind of have a problem with backup plans. I hate backup plans just because I feel like it mentally prepares yourself to fail. But football doesn't last forever, regardless. It doesn't last forever, regardless. And I don't look at this as a backup plan. I look at this as who says he has to wait till football is over to put in whatever connections that he built. This is a plan that runs parallel to football, in my opinion. They're two different tracks, but they run together and they don't ever collide with each other. So I think he was extremely smart to do that. And I thought that was well planned. The maturity that he showed off the field was reflected on the field with his efficiency and his ability to continue moving the offense. He had two really good drives. He had one that resulted in a missed field goal. There you go. I was trying to remember. I was like, man, he had a good drive, but it resulted in a missed field goal. And then also he had another touchdown drive. So I think he was the only quarterback, in my opinion, that just had two really good drives that just I felt like should have been scored. So when I look at it, he did what he needed to do on the field. He did what he needed to do. He did what he needed to do off the field. And that for that reason, he not only is the offensive player of the game, man, I think he really does win the MVP of the Legacy Bowl just for balancing both and understanding that, hey, I'm going to take advantage of all the opportunities in front of me because you have so many scouts, NFL, XFL, USFL, and all of these guys out here. But then I also have all these businesses and new opportunities that I can build. And I think that's great. We talk about the NIL era and just the idea of paying players. These are business moves. He didn't stop once he left college. He's still making business moves while making athletic moves. And for that, you deserve a lot of praise. And though we just highlighted one individual player, I want to get into what this game was as Team Gaither versus Team Robinson and why Team Gaither was able to win. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at BetOnline because it was the All-Star game. It's over. Now we're in like the home stretch of basketball. And this is great because there's so many games that are going to mean so much more as we get into the playoffs. And you can bet on all of them at betonline.net. They have everything you can need, player prop odds. So that means betting on an individual player. You can bet on the team, right? You can just bet on an individual game if that's how you feel like it. Don't want to take the risk of a player, that's fine. But there's so many things that you can do on betonline.net. And it doesn't just have to do with basketball. You can do boxing, baseball when it comes back, hockey, UFC, everything that you could possibly want, they have on betonline.net. And that's why they are the best in the business. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. And today's word of the day is candor, which is unreserved, honest, or sincere expression. So we're going to discuss this game, and I'm about to show you a little bit of candor when I tell you that the MEAC and CIAA dominated the SWAC and SEAC. But if you want to put it more politically correct or more technical, Team Gaither defeated Team Robinson 22-6. But if you want to ask me, it's the fact that that MEAC team, which was combined with the CIAA, can't forget them because they had some stars that really showed out. the MEAC and CIAA and others, because they had the Tennessee State, Hampton, North Carolina A&T people, so the non-HBCU conference affiliates, they were absolutely dominant over Team Robinson, which was the SWAC and the SEAC. And it was a game that I didn't expect to go down like that. So when looking at it, I understand that it's an all-star game, but at the end of the day, it's football to me. And it's about team versus team. You want to see how these players just show out, but I want to talk about team versus team. And 22-6 isn't a blowout of 16 points. Technically, that's a two-score game, but this did not feel close. This game just did not feel close to me in the sense that it was just something that after a while, it just felt completely out of reach. You ever watch one of those games where the score just is not reflective, even when you're looking at it, not even after the game, but the score just is not reflective of just how the mood of the game is going? That was this. At 15-0, I said it was over. I waved the white flag. I said, get my swag boys out of there. Get them out of there. Because look, it's not happening today. It just is not happening today. And a lot of that had to do with the pressure. A lot of that had to do with the pressure that Team Gaither was able to put on them. But we'll get into that in a second, because I did have some players that caught my eye, but I want to announce that we're not just leaving this topic after today. So on either tomorrow's episode or Wednesday's episode, we will be discussing just some players that really stood out, because we have a lot to discuss. There was so much that happened in just HBCU athletics this week that it was like too much. I couldn't put that many topics in here. So it's so much fun. I have so many things to discuss over the next couple of days that it really has me overjoyed. But we will get into them either tomorrow, like I said, either on Tuesday's episode or on Wednesday's episode. We will talk about my standouts, my personal standouts, and we're going to do a second look at the game. So when I look at this game and I ask what was the deciding factor and what was a big time moment within this game, I felt like the deciding factor was the pressure. So I don't want to say at the beginning of the game, but very early, it was clear that offenses were going to struggle. That's how I felt. I want to be very clear. I thought Team Robinson's defense actually played pretty well. They let up 22 points, but a couple of them were big plays. They let up about 2, maybe 3 consistent drives, or drives that took a little more time. But for the most part, I thought they were pretty stout. They even had an opportunity where Team Gaither only had 6-7 yards to go after a turnover, and they got held to 3 points. So that Team Robinson defense was actually pretty stout for the most part on the day. That's my personal opinion. I know that the score does not reflect that, but once again, sometimes the score and what's in the box score just does not reflect everything. But I felt like Gaither was able to win because they won in the trenches, and there wasn't much running, or at least successive running. It felt like it wasn't even, You had guys like Jermaine Martin. You had guys like Khalil Wilkins, who actually scored a touchdown on the pass. And you also had Bishop Bonnet on the other side as well. So these were guys that I was excited to see, but we just didn't see it a lot. And I think part of that was because the defensive lines of each team was so effective, and they were able to kind of stop the run. So nobody really did that great. Ezra Gray was the leading rusher with 33 yards. And that's decent, but it's not like a lot. And then on the other side, a quarterback led. Like the quarterback was the leading rusher. That just tells you both how ineffective the run game was in this game. And I think a lot of that had to do more with the credit, or more to the talent level of the defensive line, and less about the talent level of the offensive line, or the running back itself. But overall, the trenches is where they won, because there was absolutely no time for Team Robinson quarterbacks. Every single one. Felix Harper gets in, rushed. Jawan Pass gets in, rushed. Aqeel Glass gets in at the very beginning and in his second stint, rushed. There was no time for them to really dissect the defense. Was no time for them really to fill out things. I saw the pressure, even when it didn't get to them, it consistently affected. You saw it in Glass, because I saw um, more of Glass's possessions up close from where I was sitting. And when they were deeper down the field, because the offense was hard. So in the second half, I didn't get to see the greatest display of offense or the greatest angle of the offense from Team Robinson, because they were getting stopped so short so often. I was able to see more of the defensive play, because they're there at me, so I was able to see like that. But overall, no matter the angle, no matter the time, that defensive line of Gaither was absolutely dominant, and it's not going to look good. The offensive line is not going to look back at this film and feel good about themselves. It was situations where they're running, and here was the big difference because both defensive lines were able to get pressure. Every time that Gaither was able to get through, it was like, all right, Robinson quarterback, run for your life, because that's what it was. It felt like a free fall. But every time that Gaither got through or that Robinson got through, it felt like it was just a couple of them. So that trench battle was definitely won by Team Gaither, and Robinson got a couple of pressures in there. But overall, it wasn't consistent enough, and that's how they were able to move the offense. And that brings me to my defining moment, and that was the third drive of the game for Team Gaither, and it was a drive where they found short intermediate throws, and that's how they found success. They weren't on the field that much, but that drive was super long. It took up basically the majority of the second quarter. And in that game or in that drive, it was short passes, bunch of throwouts. They had a couple of deep passes, quick throws for the most part, and it was able to kind of keep the defensive line from really doing much. And when they did get through, I thought the quarterback was able to make a good play rolling out, and he threw it. And that was a really good 17-yard completion that led to a third and manageable. I think it was like third and 6, third and 7. But it was very manageable, and that's the things that you need out of that. I'm not gonna sit there and take away from the quarterback because they had quicker throws, but it was accurate. All the times it was accurate, and then also they managed that game. They managed that drive, I should say. And when they needed to make a big time play, they did. So that play right there, or that drive right there, was what I feel like took all the air out. After that, the momentum was completely on Team Gaither's side, and it was a 15-0 run, which was 3 scoring possessions, 2 touchdowns, and a field goal. And at that point, like I said earlier, 15 to nothing, it felt completely out of hand. And those were the defining moments. And also, that was also in addition to the defining moment I felt like was at that drive in the second quarter. It was also the changer in the game, the deciding factor in the game of the defensive line pressure of Team Gaither just absolutely dominating Team Robinson. And going forward, I want to switch gears. I want to go into the HBCU Classic between Howard and Morgan State because that was great as well. And the timing of it was absolutely perfect. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar, which is the Swiss Army knife of bars on the market. If you want a protein bar, it has 17 grams of protein. If you want to just eat healthy, it has 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and those are really low, right? If you just want to have something tasty, it's covered in chocolate. Everything. What else? What other reason would you be eating a bar? Either you want protein, you just want a snack, but don't want to eat too bad, or you just want something tasty. It has all of those things. And I personally can't think of a reason that I wouldn't eat something tasty just because it's healthy. That doesn't make sense. No more switching your diet because, oh man, this just doesn't taste any good. No. As long as you have Built Bar, you will continue to have something tasty in your diet to fall back on. So they have so many flavors, and they also have Built Bar Puffs, so they have marshmallows in it too. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that you could do, so many flavors. This is absolutely great. I'm done talking about it. I need you to go right now to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your offer. All right, as we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, the weekend did not stop with the Legacy Bowl. Matter of fact, it didn't even start with it. But our episode recap of this weekend is going to end with the HBCU Classic, and it's perfect timing. I mean, the timing of this, chef kiss. It was amazing because I feel like there was no better time for the NBA to partner with HBCU, specifically the MEAC, and have the HBCU Classic than on Saturday. I'm going to tell you why. Because MEAC basketball was in full display. It was the only thing, right? In this game between Howard versus Morgan State did not disappoint. And there are 3 moments in the NBA season, in my opinion, that are big time moments. Christmas Day, All-Star Weekend, and the finals. So there's moments within the season that are big. But as far as when you schedule it, those are the 3 big moments, in my opinion. Those are 3 big time moments that all eyes are on the NBA. And I feel like with All-Star Weekend, that was the only and best choice for the HBCU Classic. When I look at it, let's go through them. Because I said it was chef kiss, right? This is amazing. This is the perfect combination. On Christmas Day, all eyes are on Christmas. All eyes are not all eyes on Christmas, but all eyes are on those Christmas games. And I don't think that there is much room to try to fit in MEAC basketball because people are so heavy set on having their basketball. This is the day. I remember I was talking to somebody and it was talking about basically NFL versus NBA. And like, why is the NFL putting on games on Christmas Day? Because that is NBA's day. If the NFL, or people are questioning why the NFL, the biggest organization, I don't care what nobody says, the biggest organization, sports league, whatever, in America is putting on a Christmas Day game. I think that it'll be people who are like, I don't know if we're going to check out this HBCU basketball, or at least at the beginning, the reception to it could be kind of rocky because you're having people who are used to having NBA games on that day. So trying to fit in the middle, I think is kind of weird. Then on the finals, first off, the season isn't even going on at that time. But then also, you look at it, the finals is the finals, it's the pinnacle of the NBA season. Trying to fit in there, it could be kind of like it's kind of forceful. But in All-Star weekend, when you look at All-Star weekend, first off, people are coming from far and wide all over the country for things that aren't even All-Star related. You have people coming in all the city, so much tourism, so much activity within the city, so many eyes that can be on that game, so many people who can show up to those games because celebrities will just come to All-Star weekend just to come to All-Star weekend, and then boom, the HBCU Classic is there. Let's go ahead and stop in and let's look at it and see what's going on because it's an event. But then also, you look at the HBCU I mean, not the HBCU combine, but you look at the NBA All-Star weekend, it's all about events. That's it. It's you have the Rising Star game and you have the All-Star game. None of those are serious. People watch them, people enjoy them, they're fun to watch. But they're not serious. They're not real games. They mean nothing. There's no stock in them. There's nothing at stake, you know. But everything else, you have the rising, not the Rising Stars, but you have the skills challenge, right? You have the 3-point contest. You have the used to be great contest. There's so many things that go on, but none of them are real football. I mean, real basketball. So now, when you look at the HBCU Classic, it's the only real game that's on. It's the only game that actually matters. And full um they were able to take full advantage of that. So when I look at it, Detorian Ware of Morgan State, he came out, had 19 points, 7 rebounds. So he was looking good. But then also, Howard had some hoopers out there on this day. They were able to look at Kyle Foster, who came into this game as the leading 3-point percentage or leader in 3-point field goal percentage in the NCAA. And he came out, he had 8. And I thought his game was kind of unique because he didn't get it done in the way he typically did. He shot poorly from the field as far as 3 points go. But what he did was, oh, my shot's not dropping. Let me go ahead and go do something else. Let me try to get to the free throw line. And that's something that he did really efficiently. He got 15 free throw attempts up. Then you look at just what he was able to do on at the field as opposed to at the line, and it's like, okay, I get it. You weren't having your best shooting day, but you were able to get something done in another way. Then you look at Randall Brumont, who also found a lot of his success at the free throw line. And it's like, man, you got 17 points. Over half of it was at the free throw line. You look at Foster, he had 18 points. Over half of it was at the free throw line. Then you had Elijah Hawkins, freshman sensation. We've been talking about him on this show. Absolutely love his game. But you look at him, he came with 17, and he actually shot pretty well from the field. He was the only guy on the team who shot over 50%. There were so many players that were doing well, and I'd be remiss if I were to leave out Ty Bibbs, who had the highlight of the game. And that highlight of the game was just talking the dunk that he put on. He had a crossover dunk on Morgan State. Oh my God, it was great. I was mad he got teched, but at the end of the day, he was hanging on the rim. But man, that's a play that people talk about. It was arguably, well, my sources out there say it was the best dunk of the day. Tell you what you say. You know what I'm saying? Best dunk on Saturday night came out of the HBCU Classic. But overall, this was a comeback from behind victory that Howard put on. They came back at the end. They slowly chipped away that 12-point lead in the second half and then finally won. So you have a game between two teams in the MEAC that was the only real game that was highlighted at the All-Star game when all eyes are on the NBA, one of the most watched moments in the NBA in the schedule. But then you have that compared or combined with the fact that these teams put on a really good game and had some individual standouts. To me, that was the HBCU Classic taking full advantage of this game. And I was like, man, I had a lot of pride seeing our HBCUs just show out on the stage that they did because the Legacy Bowl, big time stage. This All-Star game, the HBCU Classic on All-Star weekend, big time moment. And both of them did not disappoint. And there was a lot of pride in that. So I appreciate you making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day for your second listen of the day, you need to be checking out Locked On NFL. They have Ryan Tracy and my guy Crocky, former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker, breaking down everything that you need leading up into the NFL draft. So I'm really excited for that. You need to make sure that you're checking that out as well. And in the meantime, in between time, y'all can find me on that blue app, that bird, yes, Twitter, at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.